Welcome to this week's podcast interview. I've brought on Dr. Brent Tieri. Brent, welcome.
Hey, Heather, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, tell the listeners, where do you live and what do you do?
I live just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So up until now, we're doing okay as far as weather goes. We haven't hit the cold yet. But I am a chiropractor by profession, so I've started a couple different wellness practices. But also, I host a podcast as well called Life Outside the Hustle, where we really dive into conversations around living life to the fullest and not focusing solely on achievement. I think there's a message out there that we need to sacrifice everything to advance ourselves in the world of quote unquote success and business. But I just think there's a better way to do that. So that's my focus. That's my mission. That's my message as far as what I want to spread and bring to the world.
Well, and I love your message, that life outside the hustle, because as we spoke about previously, Gary Vee, love him. I love things about Gary Vee.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, he's all about you must hustle 24/7 to get ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the message that's been filtered through entrepreneurial world. And by no means am I an anti-Gary Vee person, because he brings incredible value. I love a lot of the stuff that he does, but I don't know that necessarily that lifestyle is sustainable for everybody. And there's nothing wrong with hustling. It's just there's seasons of us working hard and grinding and getting through things and being productive. But when that becomes the rule rather than the exception, I think that's when people end up finding themselves unfulfilled, even though they've maybe reached these levels of quote unquote like achievement or success, right?
Yes, and I think that's a great segue for maybe you can share more of your background, where you came from in that whole hustle mentality to maybe kind of hitting that rock bottom or just that lost feeling to what brought you to today.
Yeah. And I know we kind of spoke previously, but I've always been, and I've reflected a lot on this lately, I've always been somebody that is an achiever, that gets things done, whether it was, and we could rewind this probably all the way back to my childhood. And this isn't something that I usually talk a ton about, but I was a kid that got bullied a lot, more in the middle school type grades. And then really the thing that got me out of that is I ended up excelling at sports. So sports was the thing that got me friends, got me acknowledgement. And I think I tied a lot of my self-worth into being good at things like that. So whether it was excelling on an athletic field, in high school, in college, I was an all-American athlete. Then I go out and start my own businesses, always did well there. So I've always been somebody that probably ties my self-worth into a lot of the external validation or a lot of the external things that I do. And when I lose those things, or when I achieve those things and I don't get that same reward, I find myself really lost. So the whole purpose behind my message with Life Outside the Hustle is that, I hustle and grinded my way to building some pretty successful wellness chiropractic offices. And then when I hit some of these numbers or levels, you want to say, I realized that didn't make me any more happy. And I probably surrounded myself with some of the wrong type of mentors, not to say they weren't successful from a business standpoint, but we didn't have the same values as far as what I really knew was important at my core, and that's relationships and spirituality and faith and my personal health. So I hit these levels and I felt super burned out, and I kind of lost the passion for practicing and helping the people around me. And that's where this stemmed out of, because I knew I had a message. I knew I had something to share with people, and I wanted to create the platform to be able to do that.
So what were these achievements? What things did you accomplish and get that you realized, this isn't what I want?
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of the obvious one right away is, you could hit some income goals. When I started my first practice, so just to kind of rewind a little bit, I graduated chiropractic school in 2009. So right after the 2008, everything crashed type scenario. So banks weren't loaning money. They weren't doing anything. I ended up starting my first office with 9 credit cards, $60,000 of loans on that, and $15,000 from my parents. That's how I built my first office. So I went from having very little, and then it was always, man, once we get up to $10,000 of collections, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be able to do the things I want to do. 20,000. And then you start to hit these finish lines that you've put in place for you, and you realize that the finish line just keeps moving. and that it doesn't necessarily make you any more fulfilled, any more happy, because it's all going to trace back to mindset and your identity with yourself. And even though I was hitting some of these things, it just never felt the way I thought it was supposed to be. And that's when I started to have these internal conversations of like, maybe there is more to life than just hitting these marks.
Well, and I can totally relate, because I used to, and I wrote about this, that, you know what, I'll be happy when I'm in a relationship. And then it was, I'll be happy when I'm married, or I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or I'll be happy once I go on that vacation. And then I was obtaining all those things, but then I was never fulfilled. Actually, I was miserable, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's kind of this thing, this conditional happiness, right? Where I'm going to be happy once X happens, right? The problem is X can change all the time. And I know we talked about this, is there's always this drive or this message that we're supposed to be climbing this ladder. And most of the time we climb this ladder and then we realize we were on the wrong building or the wrong mountain the whole time. We should have been over here doing what made us happy or fulfilled or allowed us to serve and have an impact. That's really kind of the message that I found there. And I think even I started to kind of group things into two different categories, and I can't remember who I heard this from, but there's the things that we have to do, and then there's the things that we want to do. The sad thing is most of us always hang out in the have to do category rather than the want to do category, right? So I wanted to start making a shift. These are the things I want to do, even if it's podcasts or connecting with other people. That's the stuff that makes me happy and fulfilled. So that's the stuff I want to start to focus on more than just these checking the boxes as I've always done before.
Okay. So then question for you, you used to look outside of you, material possessions, obtaining, different levels, whatever. So what changed? I mean, did you go within? Did you meditate? What happened?
Yeah, I think, there was a lot of reflection. And the other part of it too, is that I met my wife. That was 2013. I have a stepdaughter who's 9. I now have a 3-month-old baby. So it's those types of things that when you start to realize that the relationships and the people around you really mean more than the other stuff. That was probably my I don't know if I necessarily had like an aha moment of like light bulb coming on, like everything needs to change, but I just knew that something was off. And as these other pieces of my life started to fall into place, that's really where the big shift, I guess, started to happen.
Well, yeah, I'm curious. Was it a mindset shift? What happened why this woman, why did she change you?
Yeah. And that's a good question, because I can't really answer that one. I think she was because for the longest time, relationship wise, I had pushed people away, especially if they got in the way of what I thought was important to me or what I thought my goals were. Yeah. There's probably people even before my wife that if I had just opened myself up to them, we might have had a great relationship. She was probably the one that was just stubborn enough to not let me off the hook, to stick with me. And she probably saw more in me than other people. And I think she was just persistent enough to kind of fight through some of that resistance and hang around until I started to realize that, hey, this is really this is the place that I'm supposed to be at.
Yeah. So what do you do now in your daily routine or, business and life? How do you create this kind of balance or integration of outside the hustle?
Yeah. Well, and I think, and I want to full disclosure here too, because this is something I'm still working on this. I'm still, by no means have I mastered this. But I think the first part is just recognizing I've always been somebody, and probably a lot of, business owners or other people can relate to this, is that I've always been the engine in my business, in my life. I'm always the one who's running things. And if I could do something, I've never been very good at delegating it. That's probably one of my weaknesses. If we had to say my anti-superpower, is that I'm somebody who struggles to pass things off, especially if I'm good at them. Now I've gotten much better at that. So if it's not in my kind of area of genius, whether that's, like let's take my chiropractic office, for instance, there's one thing I should be doing there that I bring the most value is adjusting and seeing patients and serving patients. I shouldn't be the one creating the Facebook ads. I shouldn't be the one building out the website. Even though I can do some of that stuff and I like doing some of that stuff, I've taken a step back and passed those things off to other people that honestly are better at than I was anyway. It was just taking my hands off. So I guess that's the first step. As far as like daily routines, probably about 2 years ago, I started waking up a lot earlier. Not super early for some people, but 6:30, earlier than I needed to. So I have 30 minutes to an hour of just kind of decompressing, doing what I want, whether that's reading or journaling or just getting focused for the day. That's the kind of stuff that kind of gets me out of the rat race of like waking up and ripping through breakfast and like running out the door. I just want to be able to wake up and relax and kind of do things on my own terms until I have to go in and start seeing patients.
And so many people I speak to, I think, all of the big influencers and people doing well with their life, we all have a morning routine because
Mm-hmm.
it's that jump start of getting your mindset in order to like momentum throughout the day.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say I have very specific systems in my office too that take a lot of the guesswork and the stress out of the things that we do as well. Like there's just certain ways that things are handled and processed that then myself and my team, it keeps us all on the same page. And again, it takes things off of my plate, empowers them to be able to make decisions that don't necessarily require my input. And everything kind of flows smoother. So I will say the routines and the habits are big things that can help you excel and elevate what you're able to achieve without some of the stress and some of the chaos that usually comes along with it.
I concur. So I have to ask, if your anti-superpower is letting go and delegating, what is your superpower?
My superpower, I think I just have, for the most part, an ability to connect with all kinds of different people. And I've thought about this before, but even after some of my like rougher childhood years, I was kind of the person that had friends with every single group of people. I was never just kind of isolated. Yeah, I kind of identified more with the jocks and I was a good student, but I had friends across all groups and I loved and treated everybody the same. And it would always break my heart when people would get picked on or things like that just because they were a little bit different. I never had that in me. So I think I have an ability, even with kind of pure strangers, to just be able to kind of calmly and coolly walk into an area and form some kind of connection. I think I just have like some kind of innate trust that people find. I don't know.
That is so reassuring to hear because I've been like that since I moved actually twice my 8th grade year, which that's a pretty rough year to move.
Yeah.
But
For
anyway,
sure.
so starting my freshman year at a new high school, it sucked. But anyway, since high school and through college and even to today, I've always been that girl I have friends as many social circles. And I was never a popular kid. I actually never wanted to be them. I didn't think they were nice.
Yeah.
But, and even now, I have my snowboarding crew and I have my boating crew. I have my crew that likes to travel. I have my NFL crew. But I love that because you get so much from different people.
Oh, it's amazing, right? Because every one of those groups has something different to offer, right? Yeah. Even if it's just one little nugget. So yeah, I think we're on the same page as far as that stuff goes.
That's awesome. What I would like to do now is I kind of like to end every interview with rapid fire questions. So I have a few questions for you. First thing to come to mind, go with it.
Okay, bring it on. Let's do it.
What are 3 things you're grateful for?
My wife and my kids. I really love exercise. I love running. That's very therapeutic for me. And then I'll probably say my bulletproof coffee because that's part of my morning routine every day too. So
I hear about this bulletproof coffee all the time. I don't drink coffee, so I don't understand the craze, but why?
I never drank coffee before I started doing bulletproof, but just a lot of the good fats that you can incorporate into it. I don't usually eat a big breakfast outside of that. So that's usually the thing that I use to start my day. And honestly, it's weird, but it keeps you like full until like a lunchtime. That's usually the first time I'm going to eat like an actual meal. So try it.
You swear by it.
I like it. And I'm not even a coffee guy. I'm not one of those people that wakes up and is like, man, I just need this to jumpstart me. If I don't have it, I don't have it. But I just like it for the fuel and kind of the clarity and the routine that I've come accustomed to.
Whatever works for you.
That's right.
What is a favorite book you're reading now or that you highly recommend?
I'm actually diving into, I don't know if you've ever heard of Stephen Pressfield, but he's written a few different books called Turning Pro and the War of Art. That's probably one of my favorite books. He has a couple different ones too, but he has the new one that just came out that I literally just started. I believe it's called The Artist's Journey. I'm only a few pages into it, but everything he's written so far I really like. So if I had to recommend some stuff, or an author to check out, I really like his stuff.
I have that book, War of Art. That's why that name was familiar, but I've yet to read it. So,
Oh, go through that. It's amazing. It'll change you.
okay. What is a quote or motto that you live by?
Gosh, I'll give you what our motto is at Life Outside the Hustle, and it's about doing less, creating and making more, and then focusing on what really matters.
Hmm. Love it. Final question for you. What is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
Gosh, man, these are tough ones. I will say to just start doing it, just start taking that next step. I tend to be, I'm analytical. I'm more of an introvert, so I can get more in my own head, and I'm a perfectionist, but perfectionism almost always leads to procrastination. And also perfectionism can be a sign of, an internal, for me at least, it was kind of this internal struggle for possibly like an unworthiness and maybe a fear of judgment from other people. And I would almost use that as an excuse or a barrier. So I would say that that would probably be the best thing or the best advice is just to start doing things. And honestly, most of the stuff that you think is important in the long run really doesn't matter that much. So I would just move forward and start creating things, and you can pivot and shift and change things once you get going. But you can't guide yourself, or God, or whoever you want to say, can't guide you if you're not moving.
Yes. I have two notes on that. So I live by and love progress. It's about progress, not perfection. Just
Mm-hmm.
get started.
Mm-hmm.
And then that everything is figure outable.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Brent, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Heather, I thank you so much for coming on. I had such a great conversation with you.